to another edition of the Heavy Duty Hub podcast. As always, I'm Jeremy,
And I'm Chris.
and today we're going to be talking about silos and how silos can affect your dealership negatively, and about what to do about it, and about why they exist. So, Chris, when we're talking about silos, what do we mean when we say silos within a dealership?
So silos, buckets, they can be viewed as several different things, but usually it's departmental trauma. No, I'm kidding. It's departmental silos, meaning all I care about if I work in service, I that's all I care about. I don't care about what I do or how I do that affects others around me in other departments. So that's when we say a silo, that's what that means.
And in a dealership, there is so many different departments. There's the parts department, the service department, a new sales department, a used sales department. You have an accounting department. You have an ownership team, if not an individual. And if it's not involved with your new or used sales departments, you could possibly have an F&I department. So there's a lot of different departments in a dealership. And we talk about this a lot in our training that we do. But the main goal of a dealership is to increase the wealth of its owner. It's not to support the truck. It's not to help customers. It's to build wealth for the owner. And in order to do that, all those departments have to work together. And I will never forget, as long as I live, one of the worst things I've ever heard come out of a dealer principal's mouth, and I just stood there and I was shocked when I heard it. He said, unless my parts department manager and my service department manager are almost in a fist fight every day, they're not doing their jobs. It just blew me away. And I was saying, you know what? No wonder you're struggling right now. No wonder you're having problem holding on to service customers. No wonder you're having issues between your departments and angry employees. If the dealer principal is feeling that way, oh my goodness, it literally blew me away. I didn't know what to say or what to do when I heard that.
Well, and think about it from just the wasted time, energy that if you're not having that internal strife and struggle and fighting, what you could do if you're both aligned and focused on moving the ship, as I like to say, forward. You know, being engaged in the betterment of the company. And if I'm in parts, do I want service to do well? You are gosh darn right I do, because it's going to make more money for me. I- You know, yes, would I be selfish to say if I'm in the parts world and I want to sell parts to every person I can? If I don't sell a part, I cry inside because I'm losing money. I want to win. That should be everybody's goal, but winning shouldn't trump the goal of helping everybody and making the departments better, the company better, and making your dealership the preferred destination for a consumer to want to come to.
And then when we're talking about silos and breaking them down, and with the example I just gave of hearing the dealer principal say that at one point, you know, silos, they begin, they're manifest, and they continue to grow when upper management leadership allows that to happen. That's where it has to start. It has to start with upper management, leadership, ownership, refusing to allow those silos to exist in the first place. And I give the example all the time of anytime you're in a dealership, whether it's the sales department, new or used, whether it's parts department, service department, if you walk in and you see the manager or hear the manager complaining about another department or about the employees in another department or the policies and procedures in another department, how do you think all of his employees are going to act? Do you think they're all going to stand up and say, you know what, we're not going to be like our leader. We're going to take the high road? Or do you think they're going to be exactly like their leader and trash whatever department it is to each other and even worse to the customer?
You hit the nail on the head there. And I always like to use this metaphor when I'm on site in a dealership and I ask the people that I'm in the training session with, hey, do you have an apartment or a house? And do you have blinds or curtains on your windows? And they're looking at me like, where are you going with this? And they say, yeah, I do. And I said, so why is the dealership any different? Do we want to have our windows wide open so a customer can see every flaw, every fault that we have? Do we want that level of transparency? Or do we want to kind of shut that out, present that good image, but also in the background, work on our culture to get us to that point if we're not there? But more importantly, when we identify issues, be the bigger, better person, and you see that manifesting itself in front of you, pull somebody aside and say, hey, we can't do that. That's not who we are. If you stop it right when it happens, that is fostering the correct culture for your dealership to be healthy and inspire other people to have camaraderie, teamwork, and work together.
I don't know about you, but I know for me, as soon as you walk into a dealership, I mean, as soon as you walk in, it's almost like you could feel the aura of that dealership. And when it's a bad culture and when there are silos that have been built up over years, you can feel the tension within the dealership. And, not only does that create a really poor environment for the employees to be in, it's bad morale, it's bad attitudes. But, when we think about that culture, it is so divisive to the success of a dealership. You have departments that are fighting, that are trying to stick it to one another, trying to pull things over on each other. I've even seen where, guys have gone in on the backside and taken the general ledger and encoded things to where they were hitting other departments just to try and pull one over on the other department. And if you're wasting your time doing that, you're more worried about what the other department is doing rather than focusing on what you should be doing, which is making money for the company.
Yeah, no, I agree again. I just came across that exact thing a couple weeks ago at a dealership where the parts department was actually just putting things on, and they call it a lost and damaged ticket, but things that probably could have been returned, and they were just like, we're going to stick it to them as much as possible. And all you're doing, if you allow that to fester and continue, is you are creating an environment for you and your team that is not good. Be the bigger person. I always said that. I always encouraged, and I still do to this day, the parts manager and the service manager don't need to be friends, but they need to be friendly. And if you leave and you want to curse the other one out your whole drive home every day, so be it. But when you walk into that building, you guys are the best of buds, and you've got to present that you're a united front to your team in your actions and what you do and how you manage.
Again, it's really important that the managers, the leadership, it starts with them. And if they see these things happening, they nip it in the bud as soon as possible. And, ultimately, it's a dealership who pays and suffers when these things are happening. But if we don't take the time, like you said earlier, to straighten it out as soon as we see something happening, it's going to continue to grow and continue to fester. We have to make sure that we're nipping these things in the bud, that we're addressing them when they happen. We're pulling people aside. And here's the big point. Don't ever do it in front of everybody. If you hear an employee say something or do something that's inappropriate or not correct or downgrading the other department, whether it be in front of a customer or in front of another employee, don't ever, ever do it in front of everybody. Pull that employee aside in a nice, quiet setting. You be calm. Don't ever get all fired up and yelling and screaming, but address the situation with them privately. Tell
Yeah.
them what they did, what it sounded like to the employee or to the customer that they said it to, how that impacts the dealership, and what they need to do to improve going forward. It's really a very simple concept, but it's one that we find most managers, leadership don't want to address.
It sounds easy, Jeremy, right? Be calm, but there's something that's driving that. And I would be 1000% hypocritical if I didn't say that I've struggled with that in my career where I am very, or as I get older, I'm more mellow. But when I was younger, I was much more fiery and instant and reactionary. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten better, not perfect, but it's a struggle. And if you find you're like me and how I was, it's something that you can work at. It takes practice, it takes time, and you will make mistakes. But you've got to identify that you have that personality trait and then find ways to de-escalate that from your norm and really take a step back, because at the end of the day, if you could record yourself, you would stop doing what you're doing really fast because you're going to realize you look like an absolute moron. Sorry. And I was going to say, if I didn't say that, by the way, I was waiting for the bolt of lightning to come through the ceiling and strike me. But I also am willing to jump on the sword and admit that hey, I'm human. I have flaws, but I also am not hypocritical and would say that, oh, I've never done that, because anyone that knows me would be screaming at their screen right now, calling me a liar. So
But I gotta admit, I haven't seen you karate chop in quite a long time, so you've
I
been
don't
working on that.
I don't do it as much anymore. It's not as fun. I gotta admit, I miss the karate chops.
We just had that interview recently with Keith, and one of my big things that I preach all the time: we can't ever let emotion dictate how we manage. And Keith said he heard a great saying that when emotion enters a room, logic leaves, and it is so true. If we cannot, as a manager, as a leader, separate out our emotions and deal with the problems logically, with empathy, with sympathy, understand that that person may have had the worst day of his life. It may be out of his character when he did what he did or she did what she did. We have to take all those things into account. And if we're emotional when we do that, we're doing ourselves and the dealership a disservice. But if we can remain calm, cool, and collected, which is why, again, you never do something like that in front of other employees or customers. It gives you time to calm down. It gives you time to think about what you're going to say, how you're going to say it. But more importantly, it gives you time to think about what that employee is at or where he's at, what he's dealing with, what they're dealing with, and kind of get a little bit of insight into maybe why that happened. But regardless of why it happened, we need to make sure it doesn't happen again. Because again, if we continue to allow those silos to grow and fester, we're damaging our company and our reputation.
Yeah, and that really has got to be paramount in what matters. It's who we are, the image we present to not only our customers but our community. When you read, and I was never a big person that read reviews on truck dealerships, but I, anytime I have a new group I go into, I start there first before I ever look at 1 ounce of data. I want to see what is the perception. What is it? And ironically enough, what I've seen doing this for the last several years is it's more service related than other departments in a dealership. It's almost never sales, but it's service and then parts. And it got me thinking, why is that? And the answer is pretty simple and obvious. Service affects people more directly than parts does. And here's why I say that. If your truck is broken, whether you're a single owner operator or a fleet, the tool you use to make money for your company is now not making money. We know that every day that truck is down, you lose between $1,500 and $2,000 a day, roughly, on that repair. So that's where, being able to have our emotions in check in the dealership, have all cylinders firing, departments are working together as a unit, not as siloed people out to get each other, that can help mitigate and minimize that repair time for that customer, because everybody's got a common goal. Hey, we're going to help this customer get back on the street as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And we can go down a big rabbit hole with that and go into 100 other things, which we talked to quite a few of those already. But, it's where, you really, that's got to be the goal in the driver. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I see you were getting ready to say something.
No, no, no. When you said that, I immediately flashed back to I was in a dealership where their sales team, new and used, was out on the street selling vehicles, selling equipment, and they were telling people not to come to their shop.
Yep.
They were actually selling and telling people to take it to a competitor in town because they didn't trust the shop. They didn't trust the parts department. And that was another one of those just mouth dropped open onto the floor, like how in the world does this even happen? And how does ownership allow it to happen? So it doesn't happen as often, but it does happen in the sales departments where they do create those silos. And again, it's what does ownership, leadership allow, and what do they not? And it's about building that culture. And that word, we throw it around a lot, but you can tell dealerships that have true culture and dealerships that don't. You can tell dealerships who preach culture but don't live it, and dealerships that have true culture and live it. It's very important, and it starts at the top.
It's funny. It's very evident to your point about culture. It's thrown around. Oh, culture is key to us. This is our mission statement. These are our pillars. These are our core values. That's great. You can have a nice, pretty graphic. You can have the best mission statement in the world. But if your people, and this is something else I always like to do you have a mission statement? I ask this question. It's one of the first things I do in an interaction in a dealership. And they're like, yeah, we have one. What is it without looking? Do you know how many
Oh,
people
no.
can? Yeah, most people can't answer it.
Right.
There was a time I'm in a room, it's on the wall behind me, and no one can answer it. It's sad. So to me, culture's important, but I always say that mission statement is not only for us internally, it's for our customers too. This is who we are. This is who we strive to be. Why wouldn't you want to have that like a beautiful Las Vegas hotel, flashing neon, and you're broadcasting that out there? This is who we are. That culture matters, but you got to live it, breathe it.
Absolutely. Every day, every single day. Well, and I see we're already up against the time again. Man, these things, they go too quickly, don't they?
This is one you could talk about for probably 2 more hours, and things just keep coming up. And we've said it before, but it's the truth, Dealerships are not special. And I hate to say that. That is not an indictment on anyone in a dealership. We feel we're special, but that's the emotional piece coming in. But in reality, we all have the same struggles. Even the best of the best that you would sit there, and I'll never forget one of the dealerships I worked in. There was a dealership, and we're like, man, those guys just have it together. And you know what? They sure don't. But they put on that show like they did. And that's the important thing to remember. If you're not working on yourself or your dealership, you're never going to get there. The day you stop should be the day they plant in the ground.
Right.
And that's a fact.
Always got to be working on it.
Yep.
So, as always, as we segue out of another episode, Chris is going to hit you with all of our information on the podcast here and on the website. So we appreciate you tuning in, and please keep sending us those ideas, topics you want to talk about, things you want to dive into. We appreciate all the feedback. We appreciate everything our viewing audience has done for us. It's been a great ride here for the last year or so. So thank you very much for tuning in and listening, and continue to do so, please.
Yep. And just to echo Jeremy's statement there, thank you all for everything you do. Without you, we would not be here. We love this platform. We can't stop saying it enough, and keep giving us those ideas. And if there's a guest you know of that you'd like us to have on, just shoot us a line and let us know. I'll give you all the links to get in touch and get a hold of Jeremy and myself. So like, subscribe, comment, anything we can do, let us know, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks, everybody.
See you next time.